Fighting game characters are the most important part of any fighting game. The roster is what makes you especially endeared to it after all. You can have some of the most solid mechanics in the world, but if the characters aren't compelling, people won't play it. I mean, just look at Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite for proof of that. That game has an abysmal roster in spite of its great mechanical framework, so it was basically dead on arrival. It's not compelling to have a strong set of mechanics alone, maybe for some people, but not for most. Unfortunately, a large side effect of fighting games appealing to horny cis-straight teenage boys is that a lot of the female characters on these rosters aren't compelling in the slightest beyond sex appeal. Fighting games are one of the worst genres about this. I mean, just look at Ivy from Soul Calibur. Jesus Christ, those proportions are ridiculous. The need to appeal to horny teenage cis-straight boys and the consequences of the male gaze affecting character designs through a huge chunk of the genre have led to some dire ramifications for the portrayal of women and feminine characters in gaming, and especially fighting games, which negatively affects the rosters of them, which are the most important part. This combines with the dreaded anime fighter to create the transphobic character archetype of the character who quote-unquote pretends to be a girl but is quote-unquote actually a guy in order to trick men or whatever. The fetishization of femininity in those who aren't seen as traditionally feminine by society is something extremely popular in anime circles, so naturally bleed into anime fighters. The zenith of this idea is Bridget from Guilty Gear X2. The original character was only designed to play into this trope, the sexualization of queer and gender non-conforming experiences. It's sickening and a massive problem in these communities. We are seen as sexual taboo objects that need to be talked about in hushed whispers and jokes. We are treated as subhuman, as things for men to speak of as bait for their sexual attraction. Our existence is only as their toy. This year, Bridget was added to Guilty Gear Strive. At first, I wasn't particularly happy about this news. After all, I didn't really like the character, as you can probably tell. I figured that they would do just more of the same with Bridget, even in spite of Testament being an openly non-binary character in the game. However, they did something really interesting. Instead of just recreating what was there before, they ended up making Bridget a transgender woman. Not only that, her entire storyline is about realizing that she is transgender. At the end of her arcade mode playthrough, Bridget has a revelation. Something Bridget has been thinking about for many years spent away from the village. She's a girl. She says that out loud to the two characters she's speaking to, and she no longer insists that she's male. In her backstory, Bridget was raised as a girl because of superstition surrounding identical twins. If she was a girl, then she and her brother wouldn't be seen as identical. However, once she left home, she started presenting herself as a feminine man just to prove that the superstition was false. But that wasn't who she truly was, and her arcade mode story proves that. It's all about how she's been fighting herself, how she's been holding back her true potential because she's living a lie. She is a girl, no matter what anybody tells her, no matter how many old Guilty Gear database websites from the 2000s say she's a man, and no matter how many parents say she's a woman, she's a girl because she knows she is. There is nobody else to determine it for her. She comes to this conclusion for herself. She is a woman due to her own choices. Bridget was once a character only designed to appeal to a fetish, one that only exists in order to further ostracize and other queer people. But now she's become a true trans icon, a result of the increasing social progress made by Guilty Gear in the past few years. Her story of coming to terms with her identity and forging her own path with the knowledge of the two lives she's lived so far is a powerful statement for the character and the audience that grew with her as well, and I'm certain this will be able to resonate even more deeply with queer audiences all over the world. This really feels like the most well-considered and thought-out story about transition to be created by cis people, one that was actually handled extremely well. This has been Arcade's Everlasting, and who would have thought an anime fighter of all things would be the best career rep we had in the gaming industry outside of indies? Signing off. Thank you for watching.